Hi, IDC friends and supporters. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have with me Mina Abdelmalak. He is a fellow from the Philos Project, but he has a background in international law in Egypt. Thank you, Mina, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me.
Of course, of course. So today we're going to be talking about Rami Kamel. He's an activist, a Coptic activist in Egypt who's been in prison since November. We're just going to get a little bit of an update and then see what is being done to release him. We know that there's a huge background of human rights violations from the Egyptian government, specifically towards Coptic activists. And we're just going to get a little bit of a background from Mina. If you wanted to go ahead and talk about it.
So, first of all, Rami Kamel, I would consider him one of the, if not the most important Coptic activists on the ground.
Okay.
And it is very important to also to say that Rami has been putting the Coptic cause in as like his number one cause. While I would understand that the Egyptian government will be kind of in the time of bringing back stability, cautious about political activists, Rami has been always focusing on the Coptic cause and cases in Egypt. He has not been just like, anti-government for the sake of being anti-government, but rather that whenever the government or Sisi regime does something positive, he often would be like pointing to that positive changes, and obviously if there is something negative, he would also speak out.
So he's not just a critic. He's anything that the government does, positive or negative, he highlights it essentially.
Right, and that's what kind of confuses me of the stubbornness coming from the government of keeping Rami, especially during this coronavirus pandemic. That I don't think Rami was or represented a threat to the Egyptian regime, and that's why it is confusing to me to hear on one hand President Sisi talking about religious freedom, trying to promote the religious freedom concept. He says stuff that's amazing for everybody to hear, and especially for the Coptic American community here. Like, we haven't heard an Egyptian president talking about inclusiveness and religious freedom. So this is on one hand. On the other hand, you have Rami Kamel, the most important activist on the ground, being taken midnight of November 23rd by state security, being beaten up. We've heard that he'd been tortured and thrown in jail with terrorism charges.
Yes.
And this is an interesting thing here, because I would actually challenge anybody to tell me a name of a Coptic terrorist attack that took place in Egypt. We've been always the victim in this conflict, and the main for us, our main concern is to have religious freedom in Egypt, not to we are not a separatist. We are not trying to take a piece of Egypt and run away. We are trying to live together with Muslims and other religious minorities in peace and harmony.
Yes, for sure. I mean, definitely the work of the Coptic activists and Coptic community is to be included in the government, to have basic laws represented for them. So we have the case of Rami and others. Is there another, what's the route essentially? Like, is there another way to go about getting his release? Like, what is being done to ensure that is what I'm asking.
The religious freedom community, they have been trying to speak to the Egyptians to get them to release Rami. I'm to be honest with you, I'm a little bit frustrated with the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, the Vice President, Mike Pence. They've been promoting religious freedom, talking about religious freedom, and yet you have the most important Coptic activist. The Coptic community, as you know, is the biggest Christian minority in the Middle East. And you have this guy being thrown in jail, and not we didn't hear enough voices coming from the U.S. government to speak about
on his behalf.
His behalf and trying to get him released. I think I understand that we are all busy now with this virus that attacking our community. But at the same time, it's very important to not neglect like in some countries, as we are all following, they are releasing prisoners.
Exactly. Yeah, Iran released a bunch of them. I have a follow-up question. I understand you tweeted about this the other day. Rami has asthma, right? And
Yeah,
the prison conditions aren't very well maintained. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I think, God forbid, if Rami got infected in his jail, I mean, like, there is no good medical how do you say it? Like, there isn't a medical treatment in jails in general, let alone. And Rami had been suffering from asthma even before he was arrested, and God forbid if he caught this virus, I think that would be the end for him. I think this is the moment where the Egyptian government need to, step up. I mean, he again, like, he has never been. If anything, he has been a threat to the Islamists, to those people who are anti-religious freedom in Egypt. And this is where the American officials need to. This is the argument that need to be made to the Egyptian governments. Like, this is confusing to us because we understand cracking down on people like Islamists or radical Islamists who being accused of committing violent crimes. Now you need to release somebody like Rami, who hasn't been a threat to the very extent, or hasn't been an existential threat to the regime in Egypt. And given with his health conditions, he is in a high risk being in jail now.
Yeah. So just to conclude, would you safely, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Would you safely get behind the statement that Rami is not a threat essentially to the government? He's simply promoting religious coexistence, and the Egyptian government is not taking, they're taking this further than it needs to be. Do you see a projected, projected timeline for his release? Or is there any indication that it will happen anytime soon, or what's your take on it?
It is hard to tell. I mean, I thought with the coronavirus thing that Rami would be one of the first people to be released.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, he's still in jail. I mean, since November, really, and even the accusation of belonging to a terrorist organization, like, and this is also confusing. On one hand, we see the Egyptian embassy in Washington trying to reach out to the Coptic community here, and build this friendship and relationship with us here, but at the same time, like, we don't understand that, like, you cannot keep our people persecuted from Islamists and then being followed by the government for all of these false accusations.
And it's important to note that Rami is not a lone case. There are other activists in jail and other Coptic Egyptians that are still being persecuted right now, and so he's not a sole example. There are many others, right?
There are many others. There is the case of Patrick as well, but I just want to highlight the thing is here that I think we understand what Egypt had gone through, and the Coptic community, like any other community, there is many diverse opinions within the community. But there is one thing that we are all would agree on, that people like Rami, like Patrick, need to be released. Those are not the threat to the stability of Egypt. Those are not threat to the Egyptian regime. And if the Egyptian regime is serious about promoting religious freedom, they need to work with somebody like Rami. They need to protect the work of somebody like Rami. You cannot be combating the Islamist rhetorics and at the same time being afraid of your life because some, or maybe not even the regime, maybe like some second or third level within the government just wanted to, for a personal problems with those people, going after them. The Egyptian regime need to protect Coptic activists and religious freedom activists in general, not throwing them in jail.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me about this topic. It's obviously of grave importance, and I would like to wish the best of health for Rami and all the others being affected by this coronavirus. Thank you so much again for speaking with me, Mina.
Thank you so much.